all over. Call the meeting to order, Young County Commissioners Court, regular meeting, Monday, September the 8th, 2014, 9:35 a.m. I make note that notice was given in the matter for the time required, and that all members of the court present. This convenient, all stand, please. Mr. Pruitt, for invocation, please.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we so thank you for this day. We thank you for looking over the Slater family and laying your hands upon them. We ask that you heal him in the way that you see please. We thank you for the rain that you took some of the county this week. So we ask for more. We ask that you look over the people that's across the seas. Stay with the people that protect us. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Item number 3, public comments and presentations. You have in your packet a letter and request from the Veterans Assistant Dogs of Texas, VA dogs, terms they're going by. Read that, see their companion dog, service type dog. I think that comes from Kerrville, Kerr County. Just performing that, I'm not sure how we would be able to contribute to donate to that. That would be under some kind of terms and conditions, but you may want to review that. I'll write that in the meeting. Is there anything else?
Good turnout last night out here at the meeting. They've been like 4 or 5 churches showing up out there.
Okay, about 7 and again about 7:30. There that time. Anything else? I'll bring up a little information in the packet regarding Texas infrastructure now. That proposition will be valid with regard to financing road infrastructure projects outside of not part of the CLERK or anything. Highway work kind of explains it. We've got some facts with regard to highway funding. Some talking points. Obviously, it's a component of the constitutional amendment to allow this to perform. That's to do with our rainy day fund, Texas rainy day fund, and it's a letter of explanation. Ryan, I'm going to copy of this right here. The information process of that.
There's things better coming out already. They would be nothing had been taxed or nothing of that nature there. Legislature was talking about that in the recent meeting I was in. They looking forward that this will come out on ballot. All the people who support it. The thing about the Renee fund is in order for them to be able to spend that money, we have to be able to vote on it in order to be able to spend it. And there's a lot of money in that. And that money is contributed mainly by the oil and gas industry. So,
this is my only point about this fund and using this fund is I'm gonna be looking at the Young County there for a rural perspective and see exactly what it's gonna do for rural communities in Texas. because I'm afraid most of this is end up going for infrastructure around the I-35 corridor, in the cities there, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Metro Place, and, you know, you could say that creating more infrastructure creates the need for more infrastructure there. You know, and there is no reason that highways shouldn't be improved in the rural areas of Texas in order to encourage more population growth in the rural areas rather than continue to on top of itself in those urban areas. So, like I said, as we go forward, stay in tune to what it does for rural Texas as well as
Like
Texas
Texas,
as a whole.
the proposition will be for funding roads other than toll roads. Toll roads aren't involved. Okay, item number, is there anything else? Item number 4, consider county clerk minutes from previous meeting, that's August 21st. Seals, go to the 21st, originally, are there any additions, corrections, or deletions that need to be made? Regarding to,
So,
have a motion by Mr. Wiley, second by Mr. Rogers, to accept these minutes as presented on August 21st, all in favor? Carried. On August 25th, which was our budget adoption period, and setting for tax rates, are there any additions, deletions, or corrections that need to be made?
so we'll come in
Have a motion by Mr. Wiley, second by Mr. Rogers, to accept the minutes of August 25th as presented, all in favor? Carried. Number 5, security pledges.
Yeah.
What else?
$2,187,200.
second.
Have a motion by Mr. Pruitt, second by Mr. Wiley, to approve the update security pledges as presented, all in favor? Carried. 5-0. Item number 6, consider author's budget amendments, city budget amendments.
It's gonna go through vouchers.
Okay. Sure.
The title funds, they were spent for $79,675 and $70,631.
So we'll go back.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Wiley, second by Mr. Rogers, to approve the vouchers payable as presented, all in favor? Carried.
Amending the budget is going to be on insurance. We're asking for $100,000 to be moved over.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion to transfer that $100,000 into our insurance fund.
Can I say something about that? Is there any reason that we should put the entire 100,000 in there this month? Won't we start a new budget year in October?
Because we don't have enough to pay the ones that are outstanding right now, we're holding the,
We'll have a couple of.
43,000 plus the, so
and if we don't
if we
pay,
put 60,000 in, that'd be enough?
We have the hope that the security go through.
We'll have a couple or 3 more budget runs.
Very good. Answer my question.
if we don't pay them on time, then we don't get our discount.
Oh, I understand. I'm just trying to fit in the proper budget here.
But the good thing about it is it will get refunded. But that money doesn't stay back in there.
Motion here.
I'll make it motion.
I'll second it.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Wiley, second by Commissioner Simon, to amend the budget by moving $100,000 from the money market into the insurance fund. Accounts payable. All in favor? Carried. Item number 8, consider employee bonds. Mr. King, Deputy Tax Assessor Collector, and County Snowball Assistant Auditor. Motion by Commissioner Pruitt, second by Commissioner Rogers, to approve those bonds as presented. All in favor? Carried. Item number 9, consider tax resale deeds for Purdue Brandon Field Collins, Mod LLP, 109 on Highway 679, one in Great Street. So moved. Motion by Commissioner Wiley, second by Commissioner Rogers, to approve that resale deed as presented. All in favor? Carries. Item number 10, consider extension 8 to Brad Morrison, Kenny Barron, Ford, and request for reimbursement of Morrison 749.84 and Barron 282.50. Motion by Commissioner Pruitt, second by Commissioner Simon, to approve the requested refund as presented. All in favor? Carried. Item number 11, consider road crossing permit for County Road Mountaintop Loop Road that's in Commissioner Precinct 1. Now that one slide.
I inspected the site of the application for the road cut. I'm going to for the check.
I did the road cut. Come up with Commissioner Simon, second Commissioner Wiley, to approve that application for road cut. Pursuant to Millen Water Supply. All in favor? Carried.
Speaking of the road cuts, remember we had those ones that were pending, did they ever do those cuts?
Yes.
Whenever you get time, tell us which precincts they went through, yes, it was kind of questionable.
Yeah, it's mine and yours, and down.
Wasn't there one in
It was one.
precinct
LC Young Road, one's on the south side, I think, one's on the north side.
Was
I
there
don't know how did that divide? South side LC Young?
All right, Mike, next road, please.
But his fence is down his side. So, it's LC Young's in my
I think there was four of them.
Well, they're going to precinct 3.
Well, I won't look at them.
yeah, you have a meeting where we can look at everything.
Oh, yeah.
We'll just look at it, yeah.
You just departed the Road Bridge General.
That's my problem.
That's when we went to the Verizon sales tax.
Pinto?
Girls in Monroe.
Might want to check.
Any more discussion regarding those? Okay, item number 12, discuss and consider a joint election, city of Long, with the city of Long, on November 14th. Our county election.
The city of Long is having an election to fulfill an unexpired term for a city council member. They've asked that I run their election form from them and us to just run it all at once. We just need you guys to approve and sign off on the joint election.
According to 30. Elections code.
So moved. They will assume all,
The prices in the contract.
So, because we're already having an election in the public place with our equipment, most of they're not gonna have to pay very much. We're not gonna have to have extra equipment, we're not gonna have to have extra workers. We're already gonna be there.
okay,
So, they will pay for their own ballot programming, but other than that, they're possible.
good.
Sorry. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Wiley, second by Mr. Pruitt, to approve that contract with the city for a joint election with the city of Long. All in favor?
There's no question all every year about elections.
And
There's some confusion in London about the alcohol election.
that's my understanding.
How does it affect even the election?
The measure will be on the ballot. I encourage voters to vote their conscience, and what happens after that is really not up to me or my office.
And just one new question also, there is still a pending petition in the community.
As far as I know, I have not seen
Is
one
there
current
a-
meeting.
Is there a date that has to be presented to you for an election?
It is a rolling deadline. They have 180 days from the minute they turn it in backwards. So if they started it on or about April 14th, which is my understanding, that would make their 180th day October 11th. And if it went to the 12th, then all the signatures on April 14th would fall off. So it.
So all the signatures collected 181 days and beyond that would be no longer valid. So that means that's not going to be a special election.
Yes, that one is a standalone election.
Thank you.
That all we know.
Tomorrow, we're gonna have all the signatures. Alright, next.
Thank you. Item number 13, consider interlocal cooperation agreement concerning the volunteer division officer, 2009 judicial district. Representative of the contract is in here. The budget, we have budgeted the expense, and I'm not sure, I think all of the other participating entities have included that in their budgets. Some of them may in their current budget, which doesn't expire or end until December 31st, these things can. But I believe all entities have agreed to participate in the bonds.
The thing that we had our question about the monies that it would incur at any given time, is in number 7 here of our contract with them. And it talks about that any fees collected by bond supervision officer will be used for the offset of expenses of the office of bond supervision officer. He said that money will be put into an account in accordance with city grant, whatever they set that stuff up. I would request that we would get some kind of report and annually or biannually or something, like you got, to see about how that thing runs. So we can have an idea or get some kind of.
I think that's just good management, Jimmy, I agree with you. How will those funds be dispersed? Is there any formulation as to how, is it proportionally to the amount that we put into it, or?
Bottom supervision officer will be an employee of the city of Grant, the city of Grant will pick up the, labor expense and cost of the full employee. The city will be under the direction of, be under the full direction of the district judge, but, the non-judicial district, and probation officer will be the immediate supervisor. Directly to bond supervision officer, bond supervision officer, and director.
So far as that money in number 7 is collected, how will it be used to offset these? Will it be distributed to all participating?
I don't think so, if they use to offset the expense of the office, which will probably be under the program direction of the city of Grant. I suspect.
Well, that's what I wanted to know about the report, about how that was broken down.
So we're not likely to get any of our business reimbursed?
I don't think so. I think we'll contribute to that. I didn't know that I recall seeing in there where that's an amount or if that's going to be something. I'm sure that it'll be established in that second year.
That's a very general statement you just read to us there.
And that's the thing that I think that we may not see it in this month, in this year's budget, but it may be something that we may see in next year's budget. What we pay less than this year.
Then it would come to each individual contributor proportionally that way.
That way.
Judge, their office is actually going to be in our building. There's I understand that. The city of Grant is your insurance.
We've got to spend a kind of contribution there too, office space.
Yeah.
So are we paying on the Korean building or?
No, City of Graham, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah.
There's so we have extended this a couple months ago or so, operating, but the whole operating budget, just extended, because we have I think that is the expenditures that they're making reference to, I think, but
It also made reference that I think the sheriff's department will have a vehicle for it.
I thought the city of Grant, I think that's.
Okay, we're talking about both ways.
Yeah, I thought the city of Grant was writing that out. Sounds like it. Maybe okay to do that, but I'm not doing something that's completely 100% settled contract.
Yeah.
All things like I think the district judge's understanding that PAB is providing some kind of service or recruitment. We just look at it, well, that's my understanding. Find out.
Yet to be determined.
I don't think the office will fill until after October 1st. Everybody's budget is based on the new fiscal year. Except Stevens County, and I'm not sure about the city of Recreation. I know Stevens County's on calendar year. I'm not sure about the city. Everybody's agreed to contribute their portion part of the question, and our interest has been $10,000. I believe that's likewise in Stevens County and the city of Recreation. I'm not sure about the city of Long there. And talk about it. Poses a cost for all, or contribution from all, I think all have agreed to do that. And that will go
when we discussed this about supervisor, we were talking about it could be in the probation office, but yet the supervisor is going to be in the direct supervision of the chief probation officer.
I think that,
What's the difference?
I think there's provisions to do that one. I think the hitch previously was that they directed on spending down re-education processes. I think that's a budgetary thing. I don't think that's a law. But I don't think it's striking previously. I believe there are provisions, I think I have seen provisions in the law where the chief probation officer can supervise re-education.
So it's basically mean that bond supervisor, ex officio employee of the probation, and him being the primary supervisor.
Can't answer that.
They supervise, it's not made out of
So y'all have a meeting on a daily basis? The board?
Well, not for that though.
No, it says here, number 5, our board is creating things to be city manager, incorporate operating cities, county judges, Stevens and Young, district judge, local legal on an annual basis to oversee the progress of the loss information officer.
Well,
It says items which may need to resolve any issues that arise, so
that board not on the link yet.
it had to be, yeah.
Haven't linked. I do.
I see that in the middle of
Yeah. So I don't suppose it would be convenient until all the contracts would be signed.
I figure you don't think before you hire somebody, so you don't get together and figure out things.
I think the ultimate authority in hiring will be just the judge. But I think the application process is going to go through the chief, probation officer, and consultation between the two. I think the hiring is ultimately going to be just the judge, as a probation officer, and
remember they said something about what they're doing after it's he's supposed to be out of the office or something like that. I remember.
So they're connected by supervisory, right? Yep.
They just look at make sense, it doesn't make sense.
okay, we have report with regard to a number of supervisions out funds that are
We just need to write down monetary expenses so we can kind of have an idea.
I think the county auditor's office, I think the head of probation is going to do a little change with regard to their accounting procedures. I think all of that's going out, we going through the auditor's office. We're also doing that in the chief probation. I think it's very probation department to do that process back through those expenses. Juvenile probation probably come into the office and approve the court. And basically, all of the other checks and balances.
All those expenses are available for us to look at, though.
Just like the county set up a funds. Voucher funds.
Make a motion, we have this local agreement. Supervision officer and the district court.
Okay, contract, is this an annually renewable contract or is it?
It's probably a self-perpetuating contract. Don't know, I'll read that in there, but unless it's provided, of course, amendments or there'll be some provisions in there for an entity to withdraw. We're not budgeting for it, there'll be no budgetary clauses involved in that. Sure.
Something we can get out of, but not in our budget for it, right?
Add in that motion.
Yes, please. I think it would be good. I doubt anybody can just for a month's bill.
Anything to do that keeps up with the taxpayer money.
Have a motion by Mr. Wiley, second by Mr. Pruitt, to enter into the bond supervision interlocal agreement with the 90th Judicial District and all the entities comprising that district for said bond supervision officer. And that's with reporting provisions with the regarding the operation of that office. All in favor? Carried 5. Okay. Item number 14 is a Center Texas Health and Human Services Commission Department of State Health Services, DSHS contract. This is with regard to online services of birth and death certificates. Maria, we currently interact with the Department of State Health Services for those services. If somebody go online, Montgomery County,
Yes,
currently do that.
yes.
I did see a contract in there where we had contract, obviously, I don't know, I didn't see where we could enter into it. It was signed by the DSHS, and I think that they are, they really, we send them some funds.
They send the bill, whatever's been used, and then clerk collected the money during those transactions.
That's at $1.83 per issue. I think we're currently doing that, so
That's Andy from me.
I believe that we maintain that contract with the State Health Services, Texas Health and Human Services regarding vital statistics, online
Keep from
services.
having to drive to their county when they go.
Right.
What's that?
Have a motion by myself, second by Mr. Bobby, to maintain contract relations, and that's going to be an interlocal also with the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, Department of State Health Services for vital statistics, online services. All in favor? Item number 15, resolution support proposition 1. Here is yes, I was looking for that resolution. I missed it.
I make a motion that we enter into the resolution.
Second.
Resolution number 025-FY2014.
We have Motion by Commissioner Wiley, and second by Commissioner Pruitt, to execute that resolution in support of Proposition 1, that is the constitutional amendment for the state highway fund. All in favor?
It says in the resolution that the county road system will be open for assistance. You got a copy of that, sir?
That would be significant part for me. That's what I'm looking for. I think if fight, we're gonna have to get our share.
Yeah. Anytime we feel like stepchildren.
Need a copy of this resolution.
They use that thing, because they make more taxes and they have more influence.
That's right.
It's 5 pages for the line.
Up until Barnett Shell, most of the oil wells around the world.
That's right.
Yeah, they're down there for work. That's what I'm looking for. She runs part real good.
Okay, this resolution says supporting Proposition 1, constitutional amendment to state highway fund. This is Young County Resolution number 025-LY 2014. Whereas SJR 1, third call session, the third legislature approved a proposed constitutional amendment to be submitted to the voters on November the 4th, 2014, and whereas this proposed constitutional amendment, Proposition 1, will provide immediate additional funding for the state highway fund to be used only for constructing, maintaining, and acquiring right-of-way or public roadways other than toll roads. And whereas this proposed constitutional amendment will provide needed support for public highways without increasing taxes, and whereas the county road system will be eligible for assistance from this funding. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Commissioners Court of Young County does hereby support the Proposition 1 constitutional amendment for the State Highway Fund to be considered on November 4th, 2014, and request its approval by the voters. Read adopted on this 8th day of September 2014 by a vote of 5 ayes and 0 nays. Take that vote. What you did.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
You second.
What do you have? I'm gonna record the vote here.
We voted there.
Okay.
Wake up.
I'll acquiesce. Excuse me?
I really didn't recall that we put the motion through.
We'll find out.
Okay.
I know we first and second.
It was passed.
Yeah.
Item number 16, discuss and consider request advertise for application for well out caretaker position. Matt Pruitt is the supervisor for that.
They gave us their request and resignations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
They gave us 6 months, so we're constructing.
It's approaching number 45.
Yeah, we haven't advertised nothing, so we need to advertise and take applications. Get it moving along.
Are we going to make that?
Well, I want to address you really as not a, I'm not
not chairman of the historical commission anymore. I'm just an ordinary human being, I guess. But I am the archivist down at the archive for Belknap. And so one of the things I want to suggest to you as a court is last time when we took applications, one of the things that kind of hamstrung us as a committee was that when we got down to the final 3 that I brought to the court, once we did background check, we had problems. So one of the things I want to recommend to the court is that when you do take applications, if it's permissible under law, that we go ahead and do a background check at that time when we take the application. That way, that'll tell us as a committee whether we can go ahead and pursue that application or if that's an application that, just needs to go by the wayside. I also want to encourage the committee, or the court, if you'll consider this, is to appoint another committee to help you in going through the application so that we can suggest to the court maybe a couple that we feel like as a committee will be appropriate to be the caretaker of Fort Belknap. One of the things about Fort Belknap, and you're very aware of this, it continues to be one of the largest historical attractions in Young County because of its fort days and also because of the authenticity. I really believe in the next few months we're going to see increased activity in Fort Belknap because October the 13th, 2014 is the 150th anniversary of the Elm Creek Raid. And so I think we're going to see an increased amount of people coming to the Fort Belknap grounds and that surrounding area just because Fort Belknap was so much a part of the raid and the things that dealt with the raid. Now with that said, I think some of the things too, I think I noticed in the records it showed the caretaker would have a day and a half off. I really want to encourage you to think about maybe 2 days off because I think that's really hard on families today. Now, I say that as a preacher because, well, I'm supposed to have a day off, but if ministry comes up, you know how that works. It's the same thing with you and your jobs as well. So, I think the group that you appointed last time, the committee, is a wide spectrum of the county. They seem to reflect Aldie and Newcastle and Graham and I guess some of them are, a wide diversity of the county. But I do want to encourage you to think about appointing another committee. I do want to encourage you to kind of look at that work schedule for the caretaker. I think a day and a half is a reasonable thing, but I also think that sometimes extenuating circumstances come up and, the caretaker is sometimes, in the summertime, that's a joyful job. In the wintertime, nobody shows up, basically. It's very strenuous in some ways as far as the isolation of that particular job. But I just wanted to come and ask you to consider that when you begin looking for a caretaker because, as I mentioned, when the committee looked at it this past time, background check was a big issue for us because I don't know if you can do this. I don't really know legally what this entails, but I don't know in the process of putting it in the newspaper if you can. I think there's probably something in there that says that background checks will be done.
Yes.
But I think, in my opinion, if we could go ahead and do the background check once they submit their application, that would really save the committee a lot of time, and also I think it would help you as well as a county court to make a decision on who you're going to employ next as a caretaker. But that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Before you leave, next few questions.
All right.
The growth of the fort in its various opportunities has actually not been stimulated or maybe stymied by the ownership of that fort by the county. Do you see any alternative way to enhance the fort in its public growth?
Well,
other than public notice?
Now, here's one of the struggles, I think, with Fort Belknap, in my opinion. One of the struggles is that either we make Fort Belknap purely historical, or we make it purely reunion-oriented, or we try to continue the model we're doing right now, and that is half and half. As an example, Fort Griffin is owned by the Texas Historical Commission. And Fort Griffin has a huge amount of land compared to Fort Belknap. Fort Richardson is owned by the Texas Parks and Wildlife, and what makes it viable is simply because the fort is there, it's recreated, but then you have a park that's connected to it. I'm going to say that Fort Belknap is always going to be hamstrung to a certain degree, simply because it's just that acreage there. I'm going to suggest to you that the Texas Historical Commission and the Texas Parks and Wildlife are going to be uninterested in that fort unless Young County wanted to give them the fort grounds and 200 acres, or 300 acres, or 400 acres, which are going to really anger the people that live right around Fort Belknap. Because I'm not sure there's any way feasible that we could ever do that. I do think that probably what would be beneficial for Fort Belknap is, I think that if maybe a group of concerned citizens of the county, not just Graham, but of the county, were able to come together, or maybe even the county think about this for a while, because I think Fort Belknap is like, it's, in my opinion, it's the jewel of the frontier forts, but it's also kind of limbo, in my opinion, because in some ways we would like to have one of the barracks look like it looked in 1853 when the stone barracks were originally created. But in the current format with reunions, you can't do that.
The St. Angelo has done a great job before contract.
Absolutely.
Is that a private ownership of that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Is that not something that's in the realm of possibility for the fort?
And here's my opinion. I think the only way that would work is if the court got out of the business. Does that make sense? I think that's the only way that a private entity like Fort Concho would ever work, is if the county commissioner's court got completely out of the business of Fort Belknap. Now, one of the reasons that the county commissioner's court got involved with Fort Belknap was, number one, when Fort Belknap was recreated, they needed a county organization to really back it. And that's why the Young County Commissioners Court got involved with it in the first place. Fort Belknap Society was kind of, it was second. It's a relationship that Fort Belknap Society and the Young County Commissioners Court kind of did this together, just because we needed a county entity to help them recreate the fort. But I really think the only way that a nonprofit can be successful with Fort Belknap is just for the County Commissioners Court to completely divest itself from Fort Belknap.
Don't you run into danger with the historical aspect of the fort there?
Absolutely. And another problem you have, as all of you are aware, just because you create a committee doesn't mean that committee is functional. Sometimes you can create a committee and it becomes dysfunctional, and what happens after time, for instance, if you and I all have energy to create something, and then what happens when you and I will all age? Will the person who picks up the mantle after we've left, will they have the same kind of enthusiasm? Odds are, no, they won't. Odds are, as each generation comes up, they're not going to have the same energy and excitement as you had when you first began the committee. So, it's like anything else. I think that it's possible. I think there's some probability to it, but I think what it's going to take is, it's going to take people at the county to come together and say, let's create something called the Friends of Fort Belknap, and let's make it a nonprofit, and let's do these things. But again, it's going to have to be a group of committed people to the history of the county and Fort Belknap itself.
Sure. The funding is the primary consideration.
Absolutely.
The court,
Absolutely.
because we just can settle taxpayers so much.
Well, and in my opinion, this is not even a taxpayer issue, in my opinion. In my opinion, I don't think that that would be something that I would encourage the taxpayers of Young County to be vested in. I think, in my opinion, it should be something in the form of a nonprofit. And it, I think it's one of these deals, and again, this is just an opinion. I think there are financial resources in Young County to do something with Fort Belknap. But that means that Fort Belknap would have to be probably a purely historical venue. And number two, the county commissioner's court would have to have the fortitude to turn it over to that nonprofit, but possibly with some kind of underwritten contract that would say, if this hasn't come to pass in X number of years, then ownership reverts back to the county.
Because that Fort carries a long tradition of family unions out there.
Absolutely. And I will say this as well. In my opinion, if you turn it over to a nonprofit, then I would say the commissioner's court is going to get an earful from the residents of the county who consider reunions at Fort Belknap to not just be a cultural thing, but a social thing too. Because, people in the county have had reunions out there since Fort was recreated back in the 30s. And for some, it's not a matter of if we're going to reunions out there, it's we're going to reunions out there.
This brings me back to the problem of having caretakers.
Absolutely.
The caretakers is that we really end up messing with the park ranger.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, the enforcement of these rules, they
Yes.
become more than caretakers.
Absolutely.
And we're trying to balance the social use of the fort
Oh, yeah.
with the historical value of the fort.
Absolutely.
And sometimes the two conflict
Oh,
and collide.
I would say you're 100% correct.
Let me say something about that. You brought up a thing just a few minutes ago with regard to the contractual relationship between a nonprofit, county, and operation. We've had experience with that with the show point down here. It's gone this way, gone that way.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something right now that we're considering, or at least it's been brought up, is the possibility of divesting ourselves.
Sure.
Sure. I'm probably not going to be in favor of divesting the county into Belknap.
Oh, I understand.
So, just want to make that point. We've had that kind of relationship.
Oh, I understand.
And that's what he's alluding to. We're going to have those voices in the
Oh,
community.
Yeah.
And here we have to have with a loud one sitting here in court, because I know that you want to continue to maintain control to the county
Oh, yeah.
of Fort Belknap. But we need to discuss, is it best for the fort in the long term, as it continues to deteriorate, the amount of money we can continue to push forward before it starts to continue to shrink. The more our budgets in other places take more and more of our money, how can we ensure the health and growth of that fort?
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
going to be an interesting battle being waged right now in San Antonio over the Alamo Plaza.
Oh, absolutely.
Take a peek into that right now. We're talking about either turning it into a purely historical recreation of the Alamo Plaza, or basically turning it into an amusement park.
Right.
And the Texans aren't going to stand for that hallowed ground to be turned into an amusement park.
Well, and I would
For the
suggest,
most part.
yeah, I think you're right. I would suggest to you, too, that Fort Belknap is this really unusual situation. And what I mean by that is that I would say a lot of people in Young County know of its existence, but they're not really sure about its historical significance or historic value. Whereas there is a vast network of people outside of our county who are very aware of its historical nature and significance. And that's what brings our tourism dollars to come to Fort Belknap to do that. In my opinion, one of the struggles with a caretaker, this past caretaker, and even the caretaker before that, is we have created rules for Fort Belknap, but there's no teeth to the rules. I think I mentioned y'all before we hired this last group that, we do have signs up on the Belknap ground that says no alcoholic beverages, but they appear out there. So you're right, we're asking the caretakers to be park ranger and county sheriff. And really that's not their job. And, you know the deal. You know the problems inherent with that. And so, you know, I think back in the days when, I think it was Mr. Whitley who was the very first caretaker. Basically, he and his wife, what they did is they picked up the trash and fixed the things that were broken and things like that. But I don't think that they felt like that they were compelled to enforce those rules that we have on Fort grounds. And I think that that's going to be a difficulty since you're going to have reunions and things like that, and the county can't afford to have a deputy sheriff out there to police the rules. But I think that was one of the problems, in my opinion, that the caretakers had, was because they wanted to enforce the rules of the county and abide by the guidelines the county has given, but they didn't have training and they didn't have the ability to be a county sheriff either.
We need to keep those things in mind when we select the city here.
I think so. I think so.
Those rules, by the way, those rules, everybody, they'll have to sign.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I know. Oh, I know. Well, and that may be that we want to revisit those rules too.
I agree.
That may be something that y'all consider, and you know me, I'm glad to help the court if I can in any way. But like I say, I noticed this was on the agenda, and I wanted to come visit with you about it because Fort Belknap is really important to me as a historian, and I think it's something that should be important to all the citizens of Young
And look
County.
for an opportunity to do a public forum so we can discuss what is the future of Fort Belknap.
Well, I think that's an appropriate question because, in my opinion, we have done things, and you know I certainly appreciate the court for putting metal roofs on all the buildings. I know the purely historical characters are just furious about that, but I keep telling them, you know, that if they had metal roofs in 1851, they would have been there. But you know, we didn't have them.
Preservation is still part of it.
Well, absolutely, because we cannot afford, nor can we replace what we have out there. Because I want to suggest something to you that you may not be aware of. When Fort Belknap was recreated, that was a WPA project. And the county paid 10% of the reconstruction at Fort. The federal government paid 90% of that. And something you may not be aware of is that when they recreated the fort, about 90% of the rock that's in the fort, they tore buildings down in Newcastle and brought that rock back to Fort Belknap so that they could recreate the fort. You know, and I'm glad to chat with you anytime you want to in Fort Belknap, or if you want to try to make an appointment sometime, I'll take all 5 of you out and we'll just do a walking tour of Fort Belknap. Because Butterfield Stagecoach runs through Fort Belknap. The Butterfield Stagecoach Depot is still there at Fort Belknap. And there's lots of history to be told. And like I say, if I'm not at a surgery or a funeral, I'll be glad to come take you on a visit if you'd like sometime.
I agree with you though, I think 2 days off, you know, it keeps more interest there than having a day and a half off. It's just fair.
I was asking 2 days off, it's such a question, when are those 2 days off?
Well, I think that's an issue. I think that's an issue. You know, in my opinion, you know, Sunday mornings, I think that's a given. You know, being in the county we live in, being in the state we live in, and, you know, being pretty conservative people, I think Sunday morning is a given. Wednesday, I think, is a good day as well, but, you know, let's just face it. Reunions are going to be there
Sunday morning?
Sunday morning, Sunday evening when they check out, all day Saturday, most of the day on Friday. And in my observation of Fort Belknap, you know, reunions are pretty well done by November at Thanksgiving, and then they start gearing back up around Easter. Yeah, right around Easter. And so I think that if the court decided during those fall and winter and early spring months that they could have off more time and shut the commissary and the fort down, I think that would be at your pleasure. But I think that as you write your, or as you look over the caretaker's job requirements, that might be something that you'd want to visit, and because someone who's going to take that job is going to be someone who is going to decide that that's what they want to do. You know, I think the court was very fortunate to have Jim and Judy mentioned, for as many years as we have been. And I think that, they were very happy with the job, loved the job. In fact, not many people retire from a job and move across the street from the job. But, I just think that may be something that you want to visit when you look at those requirements and the job responsibilities of the caretaker.
We just need to be careful that we don't hire people that think they do the job, find out later that they didn't.
Well, and let me suggest this to you, Mike. When the group that was on that committee, we asked Judy Mitchell to be a part of that committee, and most of the people on that committee have some vested interest in Fort Belknap. And in our interview process, I want you to know, and I want the rest of the court to know, that we said over and over and over again, do you realize you're going to be here on these grounds? Do you realize, do you understand that? And no matter how many times we said that to them, they were like a brand new school teacher on the first 2 weeks of school. It was like, I didn't expect it to be this way. Or maybe, like you guys were when you became commissioners. You didn't maybe expect it to be this way. But that's the way it is. But we try very earnestly as the committee to tell them how restricted you are to that 5 acres. Any other questions I can answer for you, Joe? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Don.
Well, I guess the next thing, they have to do is, do we want to use the same committee that we used last time?
Well, do we want to use the committee? Or they not?
That's the question before.
I think the board probably needs certainly needs some advice from council on that.
We use the committee to make recommendations to the board.
Well, that's what they did. Basically,
They just make one recommendation.
filtered the applications, interviewed people, and then brought back their recommendation.
Maybe they need to give us more than one recommendation.
Well,
Sometimes they don't have that. Sometimes they don't have that, right? Let's not choose right.
All right.
Here we go.
You got down to three. You got down to three.
Yeah, that's the deal. Here's what we did. We sifted all the applications that were given to us. We had copies of all of them, and all the committee members took those home with them and looked at them. We brought all those back with us, and we spent 2 or 3 hours at the Methodist Church there in Newcastle, and we came up with 5 couples. And what we did is we invited those 5 couples in. We took all the applications that did not make that and took it back to the county auditor's office and let her shred those for us. And then we took those 5 applications, we interviewed those 5 applications, and we spent about an hour to an hour and a half with each couple. And then after we had finished with those interviews, we brought 3 names to the county commissioners court. And I explained the pros and cons of all 3 of them, and the background check is what took care of 2 of the couples. And that's why I recommend that maybe, I don't know if you can do it or not legally, I don't know, but I would think that you could. I mean, you know more about this, but I would think that if someone turns in an application, then that would be the time to do a background check on it, because that way we would know if it was worth our time or not.
Well, county employees that have to be subject to them.
Right,
Certain
that's
reasons that they can't work for.
Correct. Right.
Did we advertise this job outside of Young County? Excuse me, did we advertise this job outside of Young County?
No, I don't believe we advertised anyway. We may have had some applications that were outside.
Well, and I can say this, that I've had inquiries from different individuals about when is the caretaker job going to be open, when is it going to be available, and and lucky you, I told them you need to talk to the commissioner. I can't be the disseminator of information.
We talked to one person.
So, I mean,
I think there's like Mr. Wiley.
yes.
I think the meeting was before before that.
Okay.
There was anybody before him. He lived in the commissary. up there, I believe.
That's right, that's right. That's
And
right.
I think Mr. Wilby did too before the residents.
That's right, yeah. There's a note in the paper that when they, the county commissioners weren't built a residence for Mr. Wiley, he said he was so impressed because they had flush toilets.
That tells you. We know the real story.
I agree though, I think we should, when they bring the Cheryl's office, just go ahead and do it. And if they wash out, that's just what
If we do it before we turn it into them, then that'd be one less thing they have to do.
because we need to really move on this.
And do this right, sure, save a lot of headaches for all. We want to request application, we want to request them in local papers, local papers, and outside.
I think at this time, let's go outside. I think it's better.
You know, maybe a 4-part additional walls.
That's gonna be expensive.
Something like a trails and forks, whatever.
Yeah, that'd be an ideal problem to find out.
It'd be wider than on the paper.
Yeah, we can put that out on the website, Forest Trail website. Maybe a good place to advertise.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody looking to relocate or something. You know, they don't like it, trying to put back and move to a different place.
I agree, I think we'll probably find some folks that are historically oriented and work oriented that would like to move outside the urban area, maybe to a rural setting. Like I say, flush toilets could be out, you know,
Well, I think we would
you
use
have to have all luxury for some people.
just for me, I think we ought to try to use the same group of being each
Yeah.
time that has vested interest in that fort, and let them be the ones that interview.
Let it
We'll have-
3, 4.
Make sure we include one of our 5.
Yes, it's what it was last time.
Is that right, Norman?
Yeah.
You wrote 5?
I think so. Ms. Terry Woolridge, Mr. Stewart, runs Stewart Foods, Baird, with Fort Belknap Water Supply. The tax, Mr. and Ms. Tack. I think there were more than 5. Judy Mitchell was there, and I was there. I want to say that was it.
Okay, Norman, Junior.
Bear. Stewart.
Wilson and mine.
Very good. Jim,
I think that was all. I might have to go back to something else.
do you recommend that number again, or do you think that number should be a little smaller?
No, I think that's an appropriate. Now, in my opinion, I think that's an appropriate number. Is that 6 or 7?
1, 2, 3, 7.
7, yeah. I was trying to think, the caretaker, when that committee met, I think that's the committee that met when we hired James and Judy Mitchell.
Well, there was, if it wasn't.
Oh,
that meeting was.
Now, Nita Wells was in that first committee.
There was a good number of the same.
Yeah. Most of those that was on the second committee was on the first committee, with the exception that Nita Wells was on the first committee. Who? Yeah, Judy was on the second, and Judy wasn't on the first. That's what it was. But it was still 7.
Should the commissioner be sitting on the committee for that precinct?
In my opinion, I think it would be wise for the commissioner to be there during the interview process. Now, that's just an opinion, something y'all are going to have to talk about, but I think it would be, kind of like what we would call an ex officio member of the committee during the interview process. Not so much Matt that, you would necessarily have to ask questions or anything, but that I think it would be very important for you to go ahead and establish a relationship with maybe one of the applicants that, because, whatever your thoughts are is going to help the committee in whatever we bring to the commissioner's board. And then whenever we do bring an applicant, Commissioner's Court, you can at least have said.
I'd like to hear commissioner's viewpoint on it
Right,
versus the
that's
committee's
exactly
viewpoint.
right, that's exactly right.
I agree. I'd like to be part of that too, because
I think in my opinion, during the interview process, that's a pretty much, it's just a process that has to be taken care of. But I think during the interview process, I think if Matt could join us, I think that would be a better perspective as far as the Commissioner's Court is concerned.
so good members.
We'll advertise, begin the process immediately, in the local papers, and we'll go other publication.
I like those days. Website or something.
Get on the website, it'd be the quickest, cheapest way to get it out
And I guess if we don't get anything in the next few weeks on this, then we might
there. Expand it.
go now.
How long you want to, like 30 days? Less than 30 days.
Yeah. What do you think?
Texas. 30 days.
Yeah.
I think probably need to leave there. Applications to be in,
Oh, yeah.
this is,
What would we get into?
6 days.
So I did this.
That's what we need to look at, that's out there. They own Breckenridge, Palapino, and all those. If we get a small deal, if we go and put ads in those, that might make a better deal if we do that.
Will they give us a deal?
I believe they have package. Don't quote me on it, but I'm also gonna write a big story on this.
I just need to get it outside of
This area.
Yes.
Like one other one, the residents, they're down, their actual residence is within a mile.
Oh, yeah, yeah, oh, yeah.
They live there too.
That's what you're.
Call it 5, let's call it 4 p.m. Friday.
And as soon as they come in, to start checking.
Are y'all, gonna hear this, and y'all are gonna do this?
Boogie Wolf
Cheryl
Channel.
said that y'all did this last time, we're gonna get in the newspaper. Is that right?
Just go in, I'll try to get active here.
You can handle through your office, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Okay, as soon as they come in, as soon as they come in, we're going to check.
Well, I have to go through Boston, so I'll have to do it all together, it'll be cheaper on us to send it down, and I'll send it back. Because I can't do what you're thinking, it's against the law.
Now. I didn't know if you could just send them in one at a time.
Now, you have to go directly to
Actually,
Boston.
use yours instead.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not this time.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Wiley, second Mr. Rogers, to advertise for positions as full bailout caretakers to be due October 10th. That's Friday, October 10th, 2014, meeting. Job descriptions, other things reference to the job required in the county auditor's office. I guess in that motion. On in favor? Item number 17. Discussion of the burn restrictions.
I was hoping that we'd have a significant amount of rain. But that didn't happen.
If you plan to buy a house.
Yeah.
Or you can some of our stuff. About half the corners of it.
Everything moving down the road.
North Lake County, yeah. Big burn. That's maybe 600 to 1,000 acres.
Did the burn ban have anything to do with that?
They already burned it.
That's what I was thinking too. I mean, we're probably one of the only ones that's not in a burn ban. We've been pretty fortunate not having a whole lot of fire. We've had one or two little ones.
Of course, there was fire alongside the road out towards your place, out towards Fort Bell.
Well,
Go far.
Started playing.
Yeah.
Get to a cigarette out.
We had a big one last week.
Little fire on 380 right there just before you get into the castle. What am I going in there?
Wasn't much fuel there.
Close side, but it was going up. Something dragging on it started now.
We had a big one out there. Who
Who we bought when we put the burn ban on? Welders. Outside welders.
They would burn their brush.
Ordinary burn ban,
Who does it restrict?
it's just a limited restriction.
You know, I know the law can say we have a fire, why don't you have a burn ban? We can't legislate common sense out there with a burn ban, so.
Well, think about it, even dealing with the school, we've had burn ban before, the school's done the best. That's what we have. That's why we're for that.
What kind of fuel out there is there?
Certain places, there's going to be.
They don't have to have that to say. They want to put burn ban on, make it rain, we've been without burn ban,
That's the thing.
No, we're doing my road this week and brought it in.
Maybe the shortest burn ban we had, we take it off next time we can. It rains like it would.
I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready for it.
I'm neutral on this, so we're all in good. Just really just want to be careful with your fire. And then in the fall, when it will start getting up. No action.
That's one more week.
After all that.
Make a motion to adjourn.